Freehand sharpening. What is it even? Do I start on this? Do I start on this? Do I need a this? What about a that? It's hard, and it's something that I thought you might enjoy some of my beginner tips on, because I think I'm now a journeyman, or at least an apprentice, and I've moved past that really cringe beginner stage where it all just seems way too fucking hard. So here's like 5 tips that I think would help everyone get started on their journey. First tip, and I know this sounds crazy, but get yourself a fixed angled system to fall back on. You know what? If you are struggling to sharpen freehand, right, there is nothing more daunting than realizing now my first few attempts have made my knife worse, and now I can't use my knife again until I've learned it. That is a sucky feeling, and I remember it so clearly with my first Spyderco Delica. It was like the first nice knife I'd ever bought, and this was my first system I'd ever bought. And I remember I started sharpening it, and it made it worse, because that's what happens the first few times you try this. And I remember just thinking, well, now I'm going to have to send it off and get it sharpened. What a dumbass. What have I done? And just having a really basic fixed angled sharpener that has no like brain power to use, or very little, is just ideal. And just having a little backup plan, a little ace in the hole, a little get out of jail free card. I'd recommend the Worksharp Precision Adjust. It's like one of the cheaper ones. It's mainly made of plastic, but it is a fixed angle, and you can just use it pretty mindlessly and get a good edge back on your knife. So that's a great way to start out your freehand sharpening journey, is by having a really good backup system that you can, if it all starts going wrong and you just get sick of it for a bit, get back to having a nice sharp knife. Number 2 is what to start on. So this was my first system, and I got this. This is a series of Japanese waterstones by a company called Besta. These are objectively great waterstones. They're really, really nice. They've lasted a good long time. They've actually not scooped out really at all, even though they have been used badly quite a bit. Besta I can really vouch for. I've got a Kingstone there, which is, man, that stone is like my history of sharpening failures wrought large over one canvas. That thing is disgraceful. It's been gouged out. It's been it's a complete disaster. But these Besta stones are really, really good. I got these as my first ones because I just Googled, hey, what's the best way to sharpen a knife? And a lot of the SEO back then put me onto like hardcore woodworking dudes who are like, the best edges are Japanese edges. Nothing gets a knife sharper than a Japanese waterstone. And that may well be true. It's definitely not wrong. It doesn't really take into account being a complete beginner. And so then I thought, well, I'll get some Japanese waterstones in. And so what are some good ones? So these were good. These were like $100 each. It's expensive, but about what you're going to expect to pay for a Japanese waterstone. And yeah, I was looking at which ones to get. 1000 grit, can't go wrong. 1000 grit is something that every stone system will need. It's like a great intermediate stone to get between profiling and really nice honing. So 1000 grit for sure. But when I remember looking, well, what's the starter stone? And I would read these copies, like the product description, and man, they would talk up the destructive power of like a 400 or less grit stone to the point where you were scared to use the bloody thing. They made it sound like it was for reprofiling like a serrated blade into a straight one again. Like, oh, this is for like serious edge degradation. And I was like, well, I guess I'll get like a slightly higher one and just do more passes, is what I thought. So I got this 700 stone. And this stone here is the reason why I just put off learning this skill for so long, because once you're good at it, once you get used to it, you can use a 700 grit stone to reprofile. It's still going to take a while. As an experiment, I did some AUS 10 on it before. It was a completely dull knife. I dulled it on Bricky, and it is sharp again now. But it took like at least 60 passes per side, and I'm confident now, so it wasn't too bad. But even still, I made a couple of little hiccups, and if I was new and wasn't sure if I was ever going to get it right, it would have been a bit crushing even still. So starting on a lower grit, don't be scared. Don't read these things saying like, your low grit stones are going to absolutely mangle your knives. They're just not. I mean, my KME has a stone called the Beast, which is like 50 grit, and it looks like, a gravel road, right? So yeah, probably a bit much to start with that, but anything over 220 you're going to be absolutely fine. The less passes you're doing at first, the less chance that one of those passes is going to be the pass where you absolutely, go back to square one. So I would say this is what kept me away from from freehand sharpening for a long, long time and kept me on the angled systems. And further to that, I would even say don't go stones at first, go diamond plates. They are more tactile. You can see and feel them removing the steel a little bit easier. And they are going to last a lot longer, and they're going to be a bit more durable, and your mistakes aren't going to start to ruin the stones as much as they can on anything that's like, and especially if it's a naturally occurring rock. Ceramic stones are pretty durable. This is a Spyderco ceramic stone here. That's pretty durable. Hard to damage them. They are just so damn hard. But yeah, anything that's like stony, like Arkansas or Waterstone, pretty unforgiving sometimes. So I would absolutely start on, and you know what? You can look at the companies like Workshops. They're pretty beginner focused stuff, like pretty basic stuff. They go 360, 600 ceramic. Like that's a pretty safe margin of grit progressions to get what I can absolutely say are good to great edges on a knife, just with those three grits. And then by adding a few more in between, you can really get some refinement going on. But your first job is going to be getting your muscle memory down and getting it so you're doing A, step one, effective reshaping, hopefully just in one step, and then B, some effective honing, and then C, some effective finishing. And nice 3 steps. Again, less steps to bugger up. Best way to do it, I think, is with diamonds. And diamonds, in fact, are often the cheapest as well out of all of the stone systems, and they take up the least amount of space. And I mean, this is all lovely, this water stone. It's nice to sit here with my cool stones and slosh the water in, and just have one soaking and then get it out, and it's all really nice. But it ain't a small thing either, and it takes a while to get all this set up, and it's messy, and everything gets wet, and everything gets kind of covered in slurry, and it's a whole other thing to it as well. So the simplicity of diamonds is absolutely where I would start, or I guess CBN, but at my stage in my sharpening career, I really can't differentiate between the two too much. In terms of the physicality of sharpening, I always find it easier at first to stand up over the stone and look down upon it. And that's once you're sure you've got a good angle. So for the first few, you might need to just make sure that everything looks pretty level. It's great on this workshop because it's got a leveler that it's sitting up against, right? So then you just get it level. I usually just go one-handed with this one, and then just slice forward across the stone. Slice forward across the stone. I don't feel like the motion is big enough or rapid enough that I have to really worry too much about what I'm doing with my elbow, what I'm doing with my arm. I feel like I'm pretty locked in. On the larger systems where you're going to perhaps even start going back to forward, you're going to want to, I think, stand up, because then you can look down and you feel like your elbows are a little bit less restless. That's at least how I feel. So say on this whetstone here, this Japanese water stone, get it nice and wet there. This S30V knife here, going to make it nice and sharp just by just doing some rule of thumb angle sharpening. I feel like my elbows are just where gravity wants them to be in terms of depth. Whereas when I'm sitting down at a stool or something, I feel like they're sort of flopping around in the air, like I keep trying to raise them for some reason, even though I obviously don't need to for any reason. It's just kind of my natural twitchiness, perhaps. We'll all have our idiosyncrasies about what our bodies don't like about this process, but the elbows is mine specifically. Now, when I whetstone sharpen, because I'm not that great at it, I just do it as if it's a diamond stone, and it just takes longer. Some guys go crazy back and forward, and more power to them. Once you can, maybe that means you're an expert level, and you'll get all the babes, all the sharpening babes. Well, every time I go to a knife convention, all the babes must be in the secret part for the stone sharpeners, because I haven't seen any of them. So maybe if I get better at this, I'll be knee deep in knife babe clunge in no time. Who knows, huh? Anyway, it's just my little technique at the start. I'm using the rule of thumb, which will be spoilers, the next little technique. And let's move to the other side. Now, some people now pull back towards them. If you're happy that your index finger can be roughly the same as the rule of thumb, then you could absolutely just pull back towards like that. That's probably about the same thickness as that. No worries, you know? Otherwise, you can just turn the knife around. Depends on what you're more comfortable with. If you're feeling a bit amby, you know, and you're happy to do it like this, it's going to be the same thing. Rule of thumb, thumb middle of the spine, push the knife through, you're laughing. Otherwise, you can, if you're happy with your index finger, do some pull cuts towards you. If you're pretty happy that you can get it about the same thickness. Now, I am saying words like about, which isn't like me because I am one of those, this knife is 17 degrees per side, nerds. And yeah, I am sort of changing my mindset just a little bit doing this because sharp is sharp, you know, and thin is thin. And there's a difference obviously between 17 degrees and 25 degrees. There's a difference between 17 and 20 degrees, but between 18 and 19 degrees, there's not, you know, so I'm getting a little bit more gray areas in what I feel about sharpening. So anyway, see if it cuts a sheet of paper, eh? It wasn't before, I probably should have showed you that. Very nice. It's a 700 grit edge. Could use a little bit more refinement still, but yeah, slow and steady still does win this race. It's just on these stones, especially at 700, it's going to be a bit more of the slow and you're going to have to be a bit more of the steady. And you just need to be okay with that. Otherwise, stick to your diamonds. Also, a great thing about diamonds are if you drop them, they won't shatter into a billion pieces, which is, as a newbie and as someone who's a bit of a clusterfuck myself, is kind of a good attribute for them as well. Anyway, next point of call is the rule of thumb. As I alluded to first, one of the hardest things about getting stone sharpening is my angle the same on both sides? What am I doing? And yeah, it's quite simply the thumb goes along the spine of the knife and then rests on the stone. And that will give you an angle of, unless you've got an enormous like Popeye thumb, that'll give you an angle of about between 17 and 20 degrees, depending on thumb thickness maybe. And that is kind of what you aim for when you sharpen. As long as your knife isn't going up like this, that'd be probably like 35 degrees per side, or like down like this, which is probably going to be 10 degrees per side, but it's probably not even going to touch the edge on the blade. In fact, it's touching there on the blade. So, you know, as long as your thumb is roughly in the middle of the spine, lift it up just slightly, or if you can lock your wrist and move your thumb away so you don't graze your thumb on the stone, that's the rough idea of the rule of thumb. And then you just do your pushes through the stone with your thumb. You know what? You might sometimes trail it along the stone. You might end up with a few calluses, a bit of a blister or something in your first few, you know, weeks or nights of this. But overall, it's a pretty safe. It's hard to, you know, make little angles and all that sort of thing. Some guys do it. Some guys make little chocks and stuff like that to go under. All that's fine. But if you're just after something quick, the rule of thumb's not a bad one at all. So that's probably my next bit of knife sharpening advice, and probably the last bit of physical knife sharpening advice I'll give you until I'm perhaps a little bit better myself. Oh, and just one other thing, I know not everyone is a YouTuber, but it might actually pay to film yourself, because you can look at your technique after. If you think you're doing something, you might actually not be, and you might be able to make corrections after seeing your own mistakes happen that you might not be realizing you're making. So it might be worth filming yourself and going back over it later, and you might find yourself revealing some things about your sharpening style and your methods that you don't realize are happening. So it's just a really minor thing, but if you look at how the light is bouncing off of certain aspects of the shot, and if I pause it right here, you can see that I wet my pants. In short, have a backup. Don't go straight to like 700 grit to do your cutting. Probably start with diamonds, not Japanese water stones or whetstones. Make sure you stand up above your stones when you're using them, because you can see everything a bit better, and let just gravity steer a bit more of your wayward body parts. And also, the rule of thumb is the best way to get a consistent sort of angle on the stone, and the rest, I'm afraid, quite unsatisfyingly to tell you, is that it's just a matter of practice and muscle memory. So good luck. I'm sort of finding better and better luck as the days go by. It's a great skill to have. It can extend your enjoyment of your knife collection. It's certainly doing that to me right now. I love revisiting all my knives, seeing what I can do with them on a stone. It's really, really nice. So overall, definitely something worth learning, but I'm not going to bullshit you at all and say that at any part has it been easy, because at the start, it's really not. So good luck, take care, stress less, and enjoy. See you later.